Okay, so we did a little bit of a dumb earlier. I reassembled the front right wheel assembly without bleeding the brakes. I had to do that. So we're going to pop that off and bleed the brakes. We're also going to try and bleed the clutch. If you have never seen it before, a power bleeder is one of the greatest investments you can make for your own personal time and money and everything. This is literally a power bleeder. This is a cheap Harbor Freight power bleeder. All a power bleeder does is uses compressed air to generate a venturi, puts a vacuum on this little tube here guy in the end, and sucks all your crappy fluid into this nice reservoir here. So if you're doing a complete flush of the brake system, really nice to use this. You literally just put it on the furthest point, suck everything out until you got no fluid coming out, and you put new fluid in, you suck the new fluid in until it comes out. In our instance, since we're just concerned about bleeding and air, literally going to put this hose on the bleeder, crack the bleeder, hook up an air line to the handle, squeeze the handle, and then we're just going to watch for bubbles. And we're literally going to run this thing until there's no bubbles. That's pretty much it, and then it's bled. Close the bleeder and you're good to go. The clutch is just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Every time I move it, it gets worse. So we're going to try and bleed it as well. These did have an internal slave cylinder, so it means that the slave cylinder actually lives in the bell housing of the transmission and has a little bleeder screw that sticks out. So we're going to try and bleed it. If we can't bleed it, then... Oh my God, my eye. We're probably going to end up having to replace the clutch, which, I mean, it's like 8 bolts and the drive shaft to pull the transmission on this thing. I had to do the shifter bushings anyways, so that's easier to do with the transmission out of the car. So let's get to it. Okay, so currently under the truck, here's the slave input line, right? Or the here's the slave input line from the master. This guy does a bit of a bendy bit here. See this up and over and that kind of stuff. So a lot of times you get air trapped in this line in particular. The bleeder is right here. But for ha-has, I figured I would pull the inspection port plug. And what I found was remember how we found stuff in the, oh, that's a freaking carcass. That's disgusting. Remember how we found stuff in the starter? Ugh. Well, something died in the freaking bell housing. That's so aggravating. Mainly because I'm assuming that that's the reason that the clutch is now. That looks like I don't even know. That's disgusting. Squirrel. Ugh. Ugh. Oh, that smells too. Oh man. Oh man, that is really... Oh my God. I mean, I've got gloves on. I don't even want to touch this with my gloves. Holy shit. Oh, poor 10mm wrench. Oh my God, guys, this just keeps coming. Oh my God, this smells so bad. Need to sanitize my entire life after this. Oh, Jesus. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that that's why the clutch is slipping, and that we probably don't actually have a sleeve issue. We probably have a organic material stuck in a clutch disc issue. On the list of shit I never thought I'd have to do, I never thought I would have to dig a dead animal's carcass out of a transmission bell housing. But here we are, laying on an orange construction safety mat with half of a dead something. Oh my God, I actually have to pull the fucking transfer this. This is, I mean, this is ridiculous. This is, I cannot even begin to describe how, I mean, I have to pull the trans. I have to. I don't have any options now because I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I think the entire bell housing might be filled with stuff. I don't know how it would have gotten in either, because that inspection plug is the only way in, and you know what, actually? I think that's how it got in. There's a small port. There's a small port where the bleed screw comes out, and it's maybe, I don't know, ½ inch, 9/16 of an inch, something like that. Man, there is, oh, that sucks. That explains a lot, actually. That explains the slight burning smell that's not really clutch when we engage the clutch. The fact that every time I move the car, start it, run it, the clutch gets worse. On top of that, that could be contributing to our poor running condition. If there's enough crap in there that it's interfering with the flywheel and the clutch assembly, then that 1000% could be part of the cause of our rough running issue. I love cars. 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 We're doing this one on our backs too, because Taco Press is not moving for a while. It is like 8 bolts. It's not the worst thing in the world. I'll probably have it out in half an hour. I just don't want to do it. All right, one frustrating time lapse, severe rainstorm, a day and a smash finger later. We are 1 bolt away from making you seasick. We were 1 bolt away from having the transmission out. I hate pulling transmissions on the ground. Luckily, this is a manual transmission, so it's not that heavy. 5-speed transmissions are typically anywhere between, let's say, 75 and 110 pounds, depending on the size of the transmission. In a truck this size, obviously, the bigger the vehicle, the bigger the transmission. But this guy's not that bad. It's all aluminum casing or magnesium aluminum alloy, something like that. So, yeah, I switched over to video for this portion because I want to really capture the essence of what falls out of the bell housing here. Is that there's actually enough room that I don't have this thing jacked up at all. It is pure. Oh, did I really leave that bolt? I did leave that bolt. This is actually how much clearance there is with this thing just sitting on all 4 wheels and tires. I've got the wheels chocked. Park and brake absolutely does not work, so that is not on. But the wheels are chocked, so we're in pretty good standing there. Everything's loose. Except for that, I mean, the 1 bolt that's holding it in is also loose. We got to back that out, and then the input shaft is sitting in the middle of the clutch pack right now, so we'll have to slide the transmission back, probably drop it onto the exhaust a little bit. The exhaust, I found out when I got underneath here, the flanges are all crumbling, so pretty much actually where the second cat ends backwards is pretty toast. So if we damage it, don't really care. I do not have a proper transmission jack. If I was pulling like a 700 R4 or something like that, an automatic transmission, I'd probably care a little bit more about that. But for now, we're basically going to do this the interesting way, which is loosen that 1 bolt, slide it back a little bit, drop the tail end down, and then basically just grab it and kind of bench press it out of the way. So here goes nothing. As long as I can figure out how to get to the bolt without jeopardizing the whole operation. All right, we're on the bolt now. We're off the bolt now. Because transmission bolts can't be easy. Bell housing bolts, that is, I should say. We're back on now. Have ratcheting action in the removal direction. That was really smart. I throw a tie strap through the shifter housing opening in the floor pan, and drop this guy down that way. And I might end up doing that still. But it does, I mean, it does not look like a particularly beefy transmission. And a lot of these trannies are just thrown on a shoulder and popped in. These 5-speed 2-wheel drive vehicles. Oh, why don't we try that? Hey Alexa, How much does a manual transmission in a 1994 Ford Ranger weigh?
Sorry, I don't know that.
Oh, she doesn't know. Well, I guess we go and learn. The answer is not that much. But enough that I don't like it. It's a very tall transmission, meaning it's narrow, but it's tall. And I don't want to drop this thing. Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to throw a lashing strap around. All right, so all I'm doing is I grabbed the piece of 1-inch pipe that I have kicking around, and I've braced it across the opening in the shifter housing opening in the trans tunnel, and I'm going to throw a strap underneath the transmission to support it, and then we're going to put the jack on the front end of the transmission, albeit with a block of wood because these jacks are short, and this thing has got some heft to it now. By heft, I mean lift. Make sure that when we do this, we are not on any of the sensors. Alright, got some support on there. Drop the back end of the trans down onto it to make sure it holds. It's holding. Move forwards and grab a piece of 4x4. Wedge this guy up in there to give us some lift. And do the old tranny wiggle. Check to make sure we're free of everything, which we're not. What the heck is that? We've got one single, feels like a 1/4 inch, maybe an 8 mil, maybe an 8 mil bolt that's holding the clutch inspection plate basically over the transmission, and it's wedged between the bell housing and the transmission. Sometimes it turns out that what you need literally right in front of you. Other times it turns out what you need is still in your toolbox. No, it's gonna work. There we go. Inspection plate is loose. Nuts are dropping all over. It's like puberty 2.0. Transmission is absolutely loose because we've got some drop and dangle on it. The only thing holding this up right now is the input shaft. And it looks like it's actually resting on the exhaust. Wow, that smells horrible. You guys are lucky that you can't smell video in 2021 because, my God, that is a smell. That is absolutely a smell. Transmission is definitely loose. just canted on me to the side. Why don't you want to go straight? Reposition the jack here, get the block of wood out of the way. And at this point, get that block of wood out of the way. Oh man, maybe not. Need our handy dandy custom 4x. All right. We are, for the most part, free. Yep, we're free. Just gotta drop it down. Nice and gentle. Make sure we're not taking anything with us. Lines are free. This slave actually uses a quick disconnect line, which is kind of nice. Also kind of crappy because it requires you to bleed it. Requires you to bleed it every time you quick disconnect it, which I know you're not supposed to have to bleed it because, you know, quick disconnect, but. Status report. Grossed out. Grossed out is it's pretty much the only way I can describe this. So battery died there. I was too deep into it to swap batteries. And got the trans out, got the spring plate, pressure plate, and the clutch disc off the flywheel. Founder source of failure, 100% founder source of failure. While I was pulling the transmission out, I had lots of this fall on me. That's like hair and carcasses and some skeletal structures and some leaves. There's plenty more where that came from. To the point where my wife actually came up here and I said, hey, want to see a dead body? Or something like that. And then she went, ugh. It was an actual gag noise. So, without further ado, ta-da! I give to you clutch failure. I don't really want to. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is an astronomical amount. I mean, this is just. Ugh, I'm gonna have to throw this glove out. Man, and it is so packed in there. Just nuts everywhere. And clutch disc friction material, and that whole bottom is just caked pee and poop stuff from rodents. The slave bearing actually, or the slave actually seems to be okay. There's so much organic matter and like in the bearing itself that I'll probably end up replacing the clutch slave itself, especially because it's all apart. And the slave is like $27 because everything in this truck is like $27. But I did find, oh, actually something else. So remember I was talking about shifter bushings? There are none. This is in neutral, and there is, I mean, nothing left there. Just nothing left there. So I also knocked the transmission over and spilled fluid out, and the fluid is black. So we're putting new fluid in this bad boy. I've never seen manual transmission fluid that color, actually. I don't know if this is like my first stick shift for someone. That was brutal. This poor transmission has been through more than most like purposefully beat on transmissions are, I think. Anyways, onto the clutch disc itself. This thing stinks. I mean, it reeks of clutch material, and it has been slipping for a while. You can see evidence there of slip and burn. The whole center plate is blued, which means that it got hot. It got freaking hot. There's actually a decent amount of material left on the disc itself, but there's really no abrasiveness left to the clutch itself. It's just chewed up, and I don't think. Well, I'm pretty positive I know why. So when we look at the pressure plate itself. Pressure plate, again, you know, some bluing here. The flywheel is a large enough heat mass that it typically doesn't get. You have to really cook a clutch to mess up the flywheel. There's no striations on the flywheel. This has got like some minor grooving in it. You could see evidence of slippage here and where it would kind of grab and kind of go, right? And I was looking around and I'm like, well, you know, what's my cause of failure here? I didn't really notice anything in particular. I'm like, all right, well, there's some stuff in there, right? Then I noticed this entire interior lip, the entire interior lip of this pressure plate is packed, absolutely packed with organic material. I mean, nutshells, hair, fur, probably some more carcasses in there, and the entire interior rim is also packed. So the only thing I can assume, or the only assumption that I can make, you know, my best scientific guess here is that this thing sat for a while, right? And the first time that we fired it up, all of that crap was caked in the bell housing, okay? And I mean, it was caked. It was from the back of the transmission to the clutch, no doubt about it. When I pulled the transmission off, there was like a circle embedded in the bell housing from where the clutch pack was. The only thing I can assume is that when we depressed the slave cylinder, or the clutch, the slave cylinder actuates, right? And it pushes down on these spring fingers, which pulls there's a fulcrum right here, and it pulls this plate back away from the clutch, which allows the clutch to freewheel, the clutch disc itself. And every time that we depressed the clutch, and I mean every time, while this thing was spinning, it sucked a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more into all of its clutch fingers and subsequently between the actuation point. So this thing just got to a point where it couldn't clamp. When it was on the flywheel assembly, I could actually reach in. So this actually lives in here, right? Actually looks just like that on the back of the flywheel typically. I could actually reach in here and grab the clutch disc and I could move it back and forth freely, which meant that this was just not engaging at all. So chances are the slave cylinder is absolutely fine. Chances are this is 100% failed. So we're gonna order new clutch disc, new pressure plate, new slave cylinder, an alignment tool, a throwout bearing. I have the bushings already to do this because I think I said in an earlier video that I knew that these were shot. This is really simple to do. I'll do this in you know, probably right now. And then I'm gonna pick up some new fluid, and as soon as parts get here, we can get this thing back together. All right, so get that all cleaned up. Basically just took a long flathead screwdriver and scraped the crap out of it, vacuumed it out. Did confirm it was mice, found 3 dead, still furry mice in there. So very cool. Willy is a house cat. So along with that, I said that we had a shift pushing rebuild kit as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done while this is out, get this prepped basically to go back in so that when parts show up, we can just slap the new clutch and pressure plate on, throw the transmission back in, and be up and running. Hopefully getting this thing done sooner than later. I really want to clean the shop and get back on the Datsun. So I want to get back to doing fun things. Need this to get back to be able to doing fun things. So these are 3 T30s that hold this top cover in. Normally I would buzz these out with the impact, but the way that the transmission is going, I don't really feel like breaking anything. And here we are. So we've got one. You know what, I'm actually gonna switch to, all right. I like fabric gloves for doing non-oiled things on vehicles because I end up hitting my hands, my knuckles specifically on a lot of things, and the fabric offers just a little bit more protection than the than a nitrile or a latex glove does. But the second that you get oil on those fabric or leather gloves, they start to deteriorate, and then you can never get them clean either. So yeah, that rubber is completely gone. I mean, there's the new one for comparison, right? So no seal, so we're just allowing moisture basically into the transmission. This is a fluid cavity, meaning that transmission fluid is down there in there, and obviously can spill, so we don't want that. We also don't want to smell like transmission fluid inside the cab of the truck. So once you've got the cover off, the retainer off, this guy just pulls out. Little bit concerning as to where everything else went, but we're gonna not think about that and just hope that the small plastics deteriorated and got ground up in the gears. Sound good? Sounds good. Also important to note which side the flat is on. So this is a flat and a forward spacer, and these correspond with how the actual shift lever latches on. So on this particular one, it was facing the passenger side. I also much prefer to do this with the transmission neutral. So something else to consider before you just, you know, go yanking that out like I did. Now in this kit, we have a replacement pin here. Why we only have one when I hope we have two. We only have one. Well, that kind of sucks, because this pin is really what locates that bushing and eliminates a lot of that slop. This one's actually not in bad shape. This one is extremely worn. I'm gonna go ahead and pop that guy out. We're gonna check the bag one more time to make sure that we don't actually have two pins. Whoa, get over here. There's one pin there. No other pins in the plastic bag. Second pin in the envelope. Now a lot of times with these, you take a pair of channel locks, make sure that you're offset from the pin itself, the head of the pin. Oh, and I don't think this is gonna work. A lot of times you can just basically kind of press these out using a pair of channel locks. Oh, nope. That is not happening. So we're gonna try giving a little tappy tap tap with a hammer and a pin. I have a couple of custom drifts that I bent over the years that serve this purpose quite well. And remove. And let's see if we can get this side out. And try and grab these guys. Nope. Grab a different. All right, let's see if we can't finish these guys this way. So I will say this: if these do not feel like they're coming out, do not try and force them. There are other ways of getting them out. That's just the easiest way. These ears on this top plate are aluminum, and I have cracked them before, doing the very thing that I just did, that I just told you not to do. But the first time that you hit it, you should be able to feel whether or not it's moving, and you should be able to see the head move. And if the head isn't moving after the first and second time that you're hitting it, do not try and force the issue. You will crack the ear, you will have a bad time. So here's what we're looking at. These are really, I mean, these are the hinge pins basically, right? And they're just so, the ends are just so worn. So they're supposed to be cylindrical, right? Here's a new one. Here's a worn one. And that's basically what's giving that shifter all of its slop. So we have some cup or ball bushings, depending on what you want to call them. They have a hole in the side of them. These help locate the sphere of the shifter in the hole itself. And then these holes in the side are where the pins actually pass through. We have a rubber grease seal. It looks like we have 2 shims. So I believe we should be 1 shim in bottom, and then 1 guy in the middle. And what you basically want is the shim is gonna, they have like a natural little wave to them, right? So the shim is gonna try and press it up, but with this bushing depressed, you want it to be flush to the bottom of the pin. The bottom of the pinhole itself. And I'm not gonna be able to show you that because I don't have macro, but that's basically what it is. So mine are actually in pretty good shape. We're going to tap this guy back in. So we can go on better. All right. There we go. You just want it to be flush. You don't want to go too much. Same goes for the other side. So we've got 1 in. That is not the new one. That is the old one. That would have been annoying. This side's pushing almost all the way in. I probably could clean up the inside of that hole, but again, light taps. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And we are in. We've got 2 new pins in. We've got the cup in. I'll show you right there. So 2 new pins, cup. You can see the shim right underneath it. We are going to drop the shifter back in. Actually fits pretty well. Maybe. Let's see if we can get this guy locked up. In gear. We are in gear somehow. There we go, we're out of gear. So now we've got the height. We've got another one of the blue bearing surfaces, right? Cup bearings. And we're gonna check that to the deck on the top of the shifter. So this is actually sitting, it's actually sitting really well. These shims are, I don't know, they're whatever that thickness is. And I think that if we put that on there, we're gonna be too high. So the reason that this is kind of a critical dimension is the inside of this rubber boot has a gasket surface on it. And that gasket surface actually sits over the top of these 2. So you want them to be flush. If this is sitting too low or if it's sitting too high, you're gonna get slop or you're gonna get leakage. It's just not gonna seal correctly. So next step should be put this guy on here, rotate the holes. That underneath there, like that, and we will drop the 3 torques back in. Now, as with any sheet steel, flat piece of sheet steel with a gasket in it, you want to make sure when you're putting these back together that you torque them evenly, right? You don't want to fully tighten one on one side without drawing the other ones in first. If you do that, there is a tendency to distort the sheet metal and ruin your gasket seal. So all I'm doing is, I know that looks flush, that's all I'm doing. It's just flush, it's not tight. And I'm using my fingernail as a gauge basically. Once it starts to pinch on my fingernail a little bit, then I'm moving to the next one. We're gonna draw these in nice and even. And then we're gonna go tight in about 1/8 of a turn. So tight, about 1/8 of a turn, tight, if I can keep it in the hole. So tight, there, and about 1/8 of a turn. And that's it. So now if we drop the shift lever back on top, look at that. There is no more slop and play in that. We're not hunting for gears anymore. We are not deep sea fishing. We are accurately locating our gears. Ta-da! Shifter bushing rebuilds. Next step on old Willy is going to be wait for more parts, because that's what we do here. We hurry up and wait. Whoa, I don't know what you're just looking at there. We're going to go with this. So next up on old Willy is going to be waiting for more parts. We've got clutch assembly plus slave cylinder on the way. We'll get that in, we'll get that back up, and then maybe we'll take it for a test drive.